Yeah.
Okay, it's our water and sewer meeting. It's November 4th, December 12th. I think I have minutes to look at because I can track of time. So with that,
Is there just one set of minutes to approve, or is there two? I thought there was just one, so I changed what you drafted there. I think you had October and November, but I thought we did November's last month. Or October's. last
October's,
month.
yeah,
So it should be, that's right then, maybe.
I think it is. I'm thinking of Gold Rush. We had 2 months.
Right. That's what I figured happened.
I'll double check that. I'm pretty sure.
Me too.
All right. We have a quorum, so that's great. Thanks for coming, everybody. So we have an agenda. I'll make a motion. We approve the agenda.
Second. That was me.
Oh, Joe, okay. Thank you. Anything else we should add? To the agenda?
Did you got all of them? Did you have copies first?
Yeah, they got
I
copies.
just brought a few too. You need more?
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Approved. We have the November 11th meeting notes. November 14th. November. Boy, I just really messed everything up. November 14th. We'll make a motion to approve this.
I make a motion. I'll second it.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Okay. Good. So Joe, if you want to start us off with an update on the treatment plant?
Yeah, so I guess the contractor continues to be on site. There's actually a lot of activity out there. The main construction going on is just contractor addressing kind of cleanup items, punch list items, and of course, there's still a lot of wiring going on. They're installing the temporary items as well as things that for the pictures. So, but they are making pretty good progress, and they were able to initiate some of the initial startup and commissioning and training on various pieces of equipment here, starting this week and then extending really through the end of the month and early January. So things are moving forward. And you can kind of tell that from pay request number 24. There's a $119,200 $119,215 pay request. So with that, they're about a little over 95% complete. And of course, we continue to retain 5% over and above that. But they are getting pretty close. Anybody been out there recently? No. Kane's out there almost every day.
But at this point, are they running up to the retainage point where they can't request any more money? No.
Well, they've got essentially 5% left, and then they'd be at 100%, and then we'd be holding 5% back.
Okay, so when this number gets to 100%,
Yeah.
that's not the full contract value.
So
That's
technically,
minus the retainage.
yeah, we're there. We paid 90% of the value, plus or minus at this point. That makes sense. From the electrical standpoint, no change on electric switch gear, that is still out until 2024, but the temporary facilities have been installed. One item came up this, last week. They had thought they had, the 480-volt electric panel for the pretreatment building in the warehouse, and they didn't. So they ended up installing a temporary, they had a used one that they installed temporarily until that comes in. And so hopefully that'll be coming in over the next few weeks, but you know, that is just another example of some of the challenges, I guess, that we deal with on the electrical side with equipment, or the contractor's been dealing with. Lift station control panels, as we talked about last month, they're still not in. They are still on schedule to be delivered. The first one being at the end of the month here for lift station 1, and then they're supposed to continue to trickle in 2 at a time. We're supposed to have them all by March. And then the permanent generator at lift station 1 is supposed to be delivered in February. I should say at the lift or at the treatment facility, we had started up with a big generator today. I wasn't there, you were. I assume that went as planned. As planned. Yeah. You were there today, I wasn't. Anything to add? People would be interested in knowing, or we should talk about?
Just that, you know, the temporary automatic transfer switch is. It's temporary, you know, it's not what was planned, it's.
Right.
It works, it does its job, it functions, we'll be able to use it and no problem there. But then like we had another training that was for a large, pressure tank. And that didn't have permanent power to it, so. The electricians worked with the manufacturer of Pulseco, the pressure tank people. They temporarily wired it up so we could go through the screens, go through the startup, the training, and then. So then they, you know, remove that temp power until the permanent power will be installed with these panels. So.
You know, all this temporary hooking up of this panel and that panel. And then later switching out to the right panels. Who's paying for all that?
Contractors.
So it's not costing us additional.
Well, if you remember in contract or in change order 3, we did commit to paying them. I can't remember the dollar figure. They essentially half of what they thought it was gonna take. And so, but that includes all of this type of temporary equipment, the installing of that, the removal of that, and then the rewiring of the permanent. It's all included in that number, so it's in that cost. So we're paying, or the city's paying for a fraction of it. But it's 100% contractor responsible.
Did, when they tested that generator, Kane, was it able to be loaded to a certain percentage of capacity, or did they just idle it?
So the current load out there is 26 kW. At the time when we were running the generator, so there's not a ton of load.
I thought Jeff said that they brought
Yesterday they did a load bank. Where they did put a good load of 500 kilowatt load. So. But just with the lights and the little low voltage stuff, it's 26 kW, so hardly any load.
yesterday. I understood it was basically a giant heater.
Toaster.
Yeah.
Big toaster.
Load cells are crazy, especially big ones.
That's the construction update I have for the treatment facility. Any other thoughts, comments?
What if we, you know, as we kind of mentioned with all the different temporary stuff, what if we run into issues after things have been commissioned and checked out? And then they switch everything around for permanent power? Is there a process to recommission those things that are being hooked up temporarily? Then will eventually be transferred to permanent? And it should be pretty limited in scope, right? Cause it shouldn't affect any of the field wiring. It should really just be
Right.
incoming power, but
We kind of have two startups, you know, we've got a clean water startup and commissioning right now. And then we'll have a second startup for wastewater. And, so, you know, there's training and commissioning now, but there'll be additional training at that point. Too. So, you know, ultimately, the contractor has the responsibility to make sure things function. And whether it's now or in March, I don't know that matters. At least that's my view.
as long as we can identify things that don't work before they're off-site.
Right, and the vendors are all planning on coming back, or most of it, at least the big equipment vendors are planning on coming back. To do that training, which that's good. So we do have a second opportunity to, you know, if there are problems to work through that, but hopefully with, kind of a clean water startup.
Sure.
Most of the issues will be worked through. So that gets us to the startup, wastewater treatment startup, so that again, the commissioning and training did begin here on Monday. And then it's supposed to extend through, I have here at the end of December, talking with the contractor today. It's gonna be more like mid. Was it the first week in January or even the second week in January? Some of those things might spill over too, so it's gonna be a little later than the end of December. Based on the update that we got today.
Could you send out a training schedule for that, Joe?
Yeah. I can, there's a spreadsheet, a nice spreadsheet that the contractor put together, but I can send it out.
Thank you.
Kane gets the training schedule and is invited to all this stuff. Does anybody else want to be copied on that?
Yeah, I'll take a copy if I'm around. I'd almost like to stick my head in if I could.
Yeah.
That's kind of my strong suit.
And what's the end deliverable in that training to the city? Are we getting, aside from what's in the operating and maintenance manuals, are we getting, for example, video recording of the training or anything like that?
We did talk about video recording of some of the more critical training, especially if the operator peoples doesn't show up. I don't know, you're closer to it than I, do you have?
I think, the PLCs, the programming, the interface between the operator and running the plant, I think that may require some of the video recording of the training.
Sometimes it's even handy on things like screens and grit separators, you know, the guys that come out are field experts and they'll say, well, you gotta, you know, you can jiggle this around, but if it's more than a quarter inch, you know, you better have it looked at. And 15 years later, you should go back and watch that. So.
Yeah, like Joe said, though, everyone's planning on coming back for once we're operational. Kind of do the real training with wastewater.
Sure.
This is just kind of like all the SBR equipment this week and next week, it's all more like a mechanical startup, mechanical training. Everything's burning the right way.
Well, I agree, the videos would be pretty darn handy. For at least
Yeah.
some pieces of equipment that,
Yeah.
you know. aren't unique, are more unique to that facility than others.
And so a lot of times what we have is we just have a tripod with a camera and we tell the guy doing the class, just clip this microphone on and he does his normal thing. And then we download the video after the fact.
When we get this thing up and running a little more. When the permanent equipment comes in. Are we gonna have to shut down?
Well, the permanent equipment is in, it's just the electrical.
Oh, the electrical, but I mean, when the permanent electrical stuff gets here, we gonna have to shut down for a while to install that, or?
Yeah, that switch gear was projected to take 2 days.
So the whole plant's gonna shut down for 2 days?
Well,
We'd have to hook it up to temporary power.
yeah, we'll run things off of generators, and there is some opportunity to make that work. We can store wastewater without running the process.
Okay, so
We kind of thought through that. There are some plans in place that we can make that happen.
okay.
Yeah, that was a discussion about July. We were pushing on that specific item. So, and we've already talked about the fact that, you know, we're looking at a real startup of the treatment facility in mid to late March.
That one, all the stuff on lift station one will be done and it'll be pumping in, or are we gonna switch and start off on?
Lift station has to be, all the lift stations really have to be operational before we're gonna start. Do a startup at the wastewater treatment facility, so. You know, there's no point in starting the facility if we don't have sufficient wastewater to treat, so they kind of go hand in hand.
What'll be tied in first, Orinoco Estates or some of the lift stations? in town?
I would guess Orinoco Estates, but I'm kind of hoping that there are multiple crews working in multiple places, you know, Fitzgerald has had 3 crews here most of the past 2 years. We can get the most bang for our buck at Orinoco Estates for just one simple hookup, but well, it's not quite like that, but there are physical pipe connections, but it's, you know, it's probably a 1-day tie over.
Okay.
And most of the connections are a day or 2. And we should have flow at that lift station. And of course, there's pipes to fill up and it takes a little bit of time to get wastewater all the way out there, but hopefully it's concurrent at multiple locations. Mentioned last time that we do have a change order for some electrical items associated with heat trace on the chemical lines. The current estimate on that change order is about 13,350. There is still a few items that I want to work through with the contractor on that. That's why that hasn't been brought forward, but you'll probably see that in January. Anything else?
Why is the heat trace tape being added now when it wasn't figured
It
in?
wasn't being added. The heat trace was always on the chemical lines. It was the components to power the heat trace that weren't in the plan. On the electrical plan, so the contractor didn't bid it.
Mhm.
So. Anything else on the treatment facility? Moving to the Fitzgerald's contracts 2 and 3. We did just send out a resident update on last Friday that included a lot of information about where the contractor's at and where they're kind of going this winter yet, and then all the way into next spring with different startups, and really talks about everything that they have left remaining. They will be working, you know, you guys should have got, all seen that and hopefully you read it. So it does have information. I did reiterate all of the, timelines that people can start connections and how that's projected out. So, that was kind of reiterated from an update that we sent out, towards the middle of November, if I remember right. And then we kind of continued on with, kind of a hybrid update about what the contractor has completed over the last month and then what they have the rest of the winter and then into next spring, to wrap up the job. So hopefully that's helpful, for folks. Contractor remains on site. Mainly doing just miscellaneous punch list work, cleanup items. I think all of the pipe that they have to install is in the ground at this point. They probably finished the last service. Did they finish this week?
They were working on it today.
They might be close then, yeah.
That's a unique one too, so.
Yeah. There are two water services at 535 and 615 Fifth Street Northwest that need to extend underneath the roadway, and we plan to directional drill them. The contractor tried to directional drill them, and about halfway under the roadway, there's rock, so there's no rock on the south side where we directional drill the mains, but as you go to the north, there's rock, and that we can't drill these two individual services. So we've asked, we asked Ellingson to give us a price to directional drill those with a rock head, a special tooling needed to directional drill through rock. And they gave us a fair price of about, and they're gonna kind of do it on a time and materials basis, but about $950 per hour. We're estimating it'll take a day to a day and a half. And then there's an $800 mobilization. The reality is that's less expensive than we can trench it in, pay for the rock excavation and fix the street. So it just seems like a no-brainer to do that since there's no patches in the road. It's less costly and obviously there's less disruption. So we're hoping that Ellingson will be able to get in maybe in the next week or so, depending on their crew availability, and do that installation.
Will they use the same hole they got halfway through in? And just start there?
No, they filled out that night and leave it abandoned.
So starting over.
They start over. Yeah, and that part is the easy part. They actually started to drill on the north side where the rock was. And so they didn't make it real far. So,
These are two separate drillings, one for each resident.
yeah, they're side by side, not, well, they're a couple hundred feet apart, right? But the lots, the houses are side by side. Coincidentally, we did have a gentleman on Fifth Street on the north side, a couple lots down, that had a kind of an emergency as well, casing developed a hole, and he was gonna have to replace as well. Unfortunately, his service was in, and Ellingson did come in and work with Fitzgerald, and they actually connected it to his house. And he was able to get service. He was out of water for a number of days when his well failed, but at least he had an alternative and didn't have to, you know, spend $30,000 on his well.
It happened on Thanksgiving Friday.
Yeah,
When they were. found the
Yeah, that's
hole
right.
casing. And Kane worked with them real close, coordinating everything, and by Wednesday, was it, they had water hooked into the house,
Sounds right.
so they were very appreciative of that, so.
never a good time for that stuff, but that's,
About the best you could hope for, though, right? So.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said before, Ellingson and the grinder stations. Well, first of all, any concerns about directional drilling those two water services?
And that's just to the curb stop in the right of way, right?
Yeah, from the main to the curb stop, we stop.
Wasn't gonna go up the hill
No,
for the private owner,
no,
or,
not unless they contract with them
yeah,
separately, but that's
that's
on
what I thought.
out of our hands. Ellingson Drainage and their grinder stations, there's about 6 grinder stations that, the actual structures next to the buildings haven't been installed. And there's various reasons for those not being installed. Mostly impacts to existing facilities. It's just better to get in there and do it all at once. Because we have to impact their existing system. And they wanna leave them till next spring, and that seems reasonable. Fitzgerald had, as of when we put this agenda together, a couple sewer grinder station services, force main services, left, and as Kane mentioned, they maybe wrap that up today, or we'll wrap that up this week for sure. So they'll be done. One note, we got a list of property owners from the electrical contractor because they have been falling behind and connecting to that disconnect and in some cases installing the panels where they can. There are about 20 properties or about 25% of the property owners who haven't extended a service from their panel to outside their home so that we can power the grinder station. Now, with each of the last few updates, I've included reminder that you need to do this, and I guess my intent is to send out something to the property owners in the mail over the next couple weeks that says you haven't done this, it was supposed to be done a long time ago, and if you don't do it, there are some ramifications, and what I want to talk to you guys about is how we word that and what are the ramifications. Because the reality is, if it's not there for the contractor to connect to, they can't connect it. And so that means that their existing, if they can't power the grinder station, they can't connect the grinder station to the sewer coming out of the house. Obviously, they can't finish their septic, or they can't finish their electrical work. They can't abandon their existing septic system. So then they have to come back. And with that, there's a cost, right? And I think that they're reasonable. If they have to come back a little bit here and there, they probably can make that work. If there's a lot of people that just refuse to connect, it's gonna be a cost that the contractor is gonna have to pass back on the owner. And so I think that the property owner probably should understand that. They've had, technically it was supposed to be done last July when we initially started telling people this, and then we learned about the delay at the treatment plant and said, well, it needs to be done on, I think, September 18th. And now we back that back to March 18th, if I remember right, is what I put in the letter. And so, we've given them almost 3/4 of a year longer than we originally planned to. But I think that it would be helpful to say something, I'm asking, what do you want me to say, kinda?
Do you know what the mobilization fee would be? Cause then you can just tell them. Like here, it's $800 for the directional drill mobilization, right? What's the could you get a value from them? It's $200, $100, whatever it is.
It's not gonna be $100 or $200.
Hundreds.
That.
I would put that in the letter.
If they,
Failure to complete.
if I ask them, they're gonna give me a pretty healthy number, my guess is, and so is that number $500? Is it $800? Yeah, it's something in that ballpark.
Just bringing their equipment back is
Yeah,
$400, $500, $600 probably.
yep,
But it's not anything specialized, right? It's just a 2-pole disconnect. Could you say if you don't have it done by March 18th, you're gonna have to do it yourself? Hire your own electrical contractor to come out?
well, it's not that, see, it's bring the excavator back in so that they can dig the hole and,
Oh, so we're not talking about just the electric.
yeah, cause if that's not there, cause they've gotta make that go that day. And so all of those things can't happen. And so, you know, they're probably coordinating this. They've got an excavator on site or within a block. So that tank gets pumped. And so that excavator collapses the tank and fills it and they backfill it and that, you know, that pipe gets dug in and all of those things need to kind of happen within a pretty short window for them to do it efficiently. And believe me, they're pretty efficient. I mean, this isn't their first time doing this. And so, but to mobilize that excavator back and mobilize the skid steer back and mobilize the compaction equipment back and the people back, and then the electrician has to come back, and then, you know, it's
Yeah,
not just,
for onesie twosies.
yeah, for this guy over here, and then, you know, what are they supposed to do? They're gonna be gone. It could be 500 miles away. So,
Well, you'd send a certified letter, so you get the signature that they got it, right?
I usually don't send certified letters because they're expensive. We haven't done that in the past. But I can hand deliver 20 of them.
Well, are we concerned that these 20 are opposed to having the work done, or are they just?
Well, they signed the agreements. They
Right,
signed an
yeah.
agreement
Yeah.
and they agreed to do this work and they haven't done this work.
So I think that's the right path,
Reach a
is give them a
contract.
letter, right, and whether, yeah, it's hand delivered or certified, whatever. Yeah, you just impress upon them that if you don't have your part of the work complete by this date, the additional costs incurred are gonna be passed along to the homeowner, and they could be in the thousands of dollars. I mean, realistically, for that kind of equipment, right?
Maybe I should just literally describe it. You know, if you don't have this done, no, but then things get long.
Yeah, I'd just say, additional, you're gonna have to call construction crews, electrical crews back to the job site after they've already left, right? And the costs are gonna be in the thousands of dollars.
You will be responsible for those costs,
Yeah.
which can range anywhere from $500 to over $1,000.
Yeah.
And it will be your responsibility.
So I think I would
That's usually-
probably say that, you know, we estimate the remobilization will be $500 to $1,000, and if the city's charging it, we're gonna pass it on to you. And if you don't pay it, we're gonna assess it.
Well, yeah,
Is
that's.
that? I don't wanna put, I'm just,
Right,
Well,
but it's kind of lined in the sand
think-
time.
Do we have the capability of passing those costs along, like legally, right? There are mechanisms in place that we get a bill from a contractor and we just.
we
charge it
will,
to the-
we will pay it, but then we will turn around and assess them the cost if they don't pay it. It's just like if you don't,
Solution.
Right.
it's just like if you
As
don't.
long as there's a mechanism in place that can actually get done, that's not illegal or,
Yeah. It's like if you don't mow your lawn and the city has to mow it, or if you don't pay your sewer bill and the city has to pay it, or, you know.
yeah, those are in statute or
Right.
whatever we call it, right? City ordinance.
Right.
So as long as city ordinance allows that, then yeah, I think that seems reasonable to me.
I think we can do that. I think
Or the
we,
city attorney needs to put something together for this council, right?
we have a legal agreement. I can look to the agreement and say what the enforcement mechanism is.
I would just want to make sure that avenue is open before we pay it. And we don't have any recourse to get those funds back.
We don't have any choice but to pay it. I mean, the contractor does the work and we're, you know.
No, we would just say, you know what, you didn't get your stuff done. You're not getting hooked up. It's on you to call these crews back.
Well, the other piece of it is we have that mechanism that says if you don't connect by the time you're supposed to connect, we're gonna start charging you the monthly fee. And that monthly fee is gonna be equal to or probably higher than your utility bill. And way back when, that fee was set at $75. And so that's in play too, right? I mean, not only are you gonna be charged this remobilization charge, but you know, we're gonna start billing you. It's not gonna be free. You're not gonna just continue to skate by. If we come and want to hook you up and you're not ready, then that's a problem. Now, what I envision people are gonna say is, well, it's winter. How am I supposed to have my electrician trench in this conduit in January?
On the ground.
Well, I mean,
It isn't that deep yet, but.
well, it's
in
not,
January
yeah,
It will be.
yeah.
And they're in for thawing on top of everything else. So,
You know,
Well, I mean. Realistically, everybody signed the original thing, so I would expect that if you were to send a letter out. And outline these additional costs, that could be well over $1,000, right?
They'll find a way to.
They will get it done sooner than later, and if you tell them, obviously, right now, we have a nice little warm stretch still. You know, take advantage of it now, because if you wait any longer, it could cost you even more. And that's all gonna be on them. I think that people will be compliant. I think people will just procrastinate and put it off because it's not urgent, right? Everything keeps getting delayed. It's like, oh, we'll do that later.
No.
But if you outline it to them and explain them, I think it would be very reasonable. I would bet you would have compliance.
Actually, the installation of electrical would be one of the cheaper things compared to bringing back excavators and all that
yeah.
equipment.
Yeah.
Because they can trench, you know, they only go down 3 foot, 2 foot sometimes, and they can
probably
trench,
are
you
putting it
can,
on a shovel.
well, they can trench through that with a
Bet they
grinder.
are.
With the grinders, they can
Are they?
trench through that right now.
In a lot of these spots, there's not gonna be much frost, you know, it's in a backyard with grass right next to the house, there shouldn't be a lot of
A lot of
frost.
trees that make difference.
Yeah.
Joe, maybe we want to get a feel from these homeowners, you know, if we get the list. Maybe meet with these people and see what the holdup is. Do they? You know, why are they holdouts? Are they never wanna hook up? Like, what is their reason why they haven't done it, you know? Maybe some
Here,
people.
I mean,
don't-
they signed the agreement.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
If
don't
they
know.
have a financial issue, well, we provided them mechanisms to help pay for it. If they were opposed to, or are opposed to the project and want to delay their connection as long as possible, why did they sign the agreement? You know, it's a delay tactic. In some instances, it's just procrastination, and others, my guess is,
it's a big project and a lot of people don't know how to approach it. you
Well,
know,
and
It's a
yeah.
big change.
like
It's
the water,
overwhelming.
the water connections, Joe, we still have confused residents coming in for the water and. The ones who wanna reach out and talk to me or my team, we can walk them through it. We can hold their hand through the couple steps that need to
yeah,
take place and prioritize the work and schedule the work. Maybe that's the case with some of these people. I don't know. I'm not, but. You've got
yeah,
some
but this is call an electrician. We've given you a list of 5 electricians. They've all done projects. They all know exactly what needs to be done. You know, it's just not that complicated.
Again, I really do believe if you send a letter with the consequences of not, if you're not doing this and what it could cost you. That will be a great motivation to call one of those 5 electricians to get
They'll
it
be
done.
there
If you
to-
told me it's gonna cost me an extra $1,000, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna call tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right, I have to think most people are gonna be like that.
I agree.
Well, we'll proceed like that. We'll talk about that $75 a month. We'll talk about the $500 to $1,000.
I'd say up to 1,500.
Yeah,
You think higher?
I agree, 1,500.
If you have to pull everybody back in again, all that equipment. You know, $500 or $1,000 isn't gonna cover it.
Yeah.
So you wanna say,
1,500.
Just say in the thousands.
Yeah, that's.
Well, I think- I
$1,000.
would like to have a,
It could cost you 1,500 or more.
you wanna say that?
Yeah.
That's true.
Or more.
We're not, I mean, we're
instead
not
of up
putting,
to,
you know,
because
we're
it
not
could be more.
committing
I don't
to how
know.
much it's gonna cost. It's like, it might, this is a
It
good
could be
guess.
1,500 or more. And if it's not, then they're like, great, I made it under the $1,500 cap, you know, whether that's a actual, you know.
Yeah.
Plausible number, or what not, but. I mean, if these guys are, you know, down in Iowa doing a ethanol plant or something and somebody wants their. Station hooked up, you know, it's not gonna be $500, you know, 2,500, so.
Are the 20 in one area or is it kind of spread out every?
Or just arbitrary? So we wanna say more than 1,500 or we wanna say 1,000 to 1,500?
Could cost more than 1,500.
If you put a limit, they're gonna hold you to the limit and say, we're not gonna pay anything more than that. So I think I
Yeah,
would-
well,
I
did
would
you say
say
could
$1,000.
cost
I said, could
$1,500
cost you
or more?
$1,500 or more.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
Or
good.
less, but,
I think
you know,
I like
whatever.
that word.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather say a dollar figure or more as opposed to up to, because if we're over,
Right,
then you'll say,
right.
well.
We're not giving them a not to exceed.
$1,500 or more.
Which will be your burden to pay.
Right.
Oh, that's incentive. That's
Yeah, I mean,
probably as much as the electric service costs.
Right.
yeah. Okay,
So I haven't had a chance to talk to Kane about this yet, but at 930 First Street. I think Merck cut into the new pavement. To install gas service. To that new house that,
Yep, and the bituminous plant had already shut down for the year, so they put some concrete patch in there to get through the year with the intent of coming back in the spring, summer, and carrying it out, making it bituminous.
did you know they were doing that?
Yeah, that homeowner needed gas.
The one that refuses to install his
Yeah,
culvert?
I wasn't gonna stand in between him and
Right.
living in that house or occupancy, heating season. I wasn't gonna be that guy, so. You know, it's a low traveled road, you know, it's not the frontage road, so. It'll be fine, it'll hold up.
Big patch?
4x4, 3x3,
Big enough.
big enough, yeah.
Fitzgerald does have a pay request. Number 22, I forgot to bring it with me. It is in the council packet. It's like 640,000. I'll update it.
I got the sheet, so.
Yeah, I've got it obviously at the office. I didn't print it tonight. So their total is about 85% done. And so the reason it's not closer to 100% done is we're not paying for all the lift stations because they ain't working yet. And they've got all that workforce next spring in the downtown area. The bituminous works, final lift of workforce, a little bit more restoration. And then the decommissioning of the SSTS and their final connection. So that equates to about 15% of the remaining contract. So there's some money and effort there. I've been looking at budgets year end, and one of the things that I looked at was Stantec's budget for the project.
Grab a copy of the.
I got using wide back out. Mine are in color, but. Anyway, good news is we're under budget. The only issue that I have is that, we're under budget as a whole, and I'm kind of projecting the cost out to when we're done with record plans and everything's done. And I think that total is gonna be under budget, maybe 5 to 10%. The only issue that I have is I'm more under budget at the wastewater treatment plant than I am on Fitzgerald's job. And frankly, we've spent a lot more time on Fitzgerald's job than we have on Staub's job. And so all I'm kind of asking the council to do is take some of the budget that we have for the wastewater treatment plant and let me move it to Fitzgerald's job so that we have more budget to wrap things up. So we're not increasing the budget, we're just asking to shift that budget. Even with that shift, where the bottom line is we're gonna be under budget. So that's kind of what this letter's about.
And that, again, projects through spring and all of Fitzgerald's wrap-up work
Yep.
through April or whatever there.
So frankly, we're doing really pretty good considering the project is gonna take longer than we kind of expected it to take.
You didn't have 6 months worth of cushion built into there?
No. We did, we always had, there always some contingency, but
Component supply work that out. for us.
Yeah.
anyway. So that's the scoop on that. Any questions about that? That'll go to council because it's.
Do you need to recommend anything to the council? Your request, shift of the 100,000?
Up to you guys if you want to it.
I wouldn't. Seems pretty straightforward. I don't think council's gonna regard.
They can do what they wanna do anyhow.
Hope it's not controversial. It shouldn't be controversial in my opinion.
I'll make a motion to recommend to council that, we shift $100,000 of the, wastewater treatment plant budget to contracts 2 and 3.
Second it.
That Ross?
Yeah.
Any other question? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
And that gets us to the discussion about the irrigation. How to deal with irrigation. Kane just stepped out. But at our last meeting, we discussed, Kane brought some information forward and we were discussing how to handle people that irrigate a lot. In terms of, they pay for the water coming in, but they're not, that water meter essentially also is how we calculate sewer rates. And so if a lot of that water irrigation is going on the grass, they shouldn't be charged for it. And so there's really 2 ways to handle that. One is to make the property owner install a second meter and then essentially do the math. That's expensive. And there's a little bit of extra labor on the city side of it, not only administering those additional meters and taking care of them, but doing the calculation. The other way to do it is to look at water usage in the summer and compare that to the average water use in non-irrigation months. And before we kind of talked about December, January, February, March. You could probably add a month on to that both ways and kind of come up with a larger average that might be more accurate. And if the summer months usage is greater than the average of the winter months usage, then you just charge them the winter months usage. That's one way you do it. The other way you could think about it is you could do the same scenario, but you charge them, let's say 110% of the winter months usage. Just because, well, probably people are using more water to wash clothes and take showers in the summer than they are in the winter. Up to you guys what you want to do there.
Like a lot of irrigation, they're washing cars and everything else in the summer, so there's gonna be a lot of.
Yeah, well,
other stuff
we
they
want to
do.
discount that we don't want them to have to pay for, watering your flowers or your grass or washing your car in the lawn or something like that. Right?
Yeah, I don't think the metering, I don't think, outflow metering is the way to go though, because, it is gonna be, it could be, $1,000, $1,500. To have that done, that's gonna be a really hard sell, I think. I think mathematically, averaging it out is the way to go, in my opinion.
We just give them the option.
And do you want to average that over? I kind of think we should use more months than less months. I know, use November, December, January, February, March, probably even April.
Yeah, that'd be a 6 months, so that's
6, 7 months, yeah.
Yeah, I think in the May, I think that's pushing it too late. I don't usually water my lawn in May, but I know some folks do.
Some years
If you're
you
planting
would.
a garden or something like that, you might be, so.
I think the 6 months average makes sense, November to April.
Yeah.
That's the fair way to do it.
Then you just wanna use 100% of that average or 100% of it?
Well,
I don't,
10% don't sound, water is so cheap, really.
It is.
If you look at your water bill, your monthly water bill. The VFW, our monthly water bill is less than $2. But our overall bill is $30, so it isn't the water, the amount of water that we're using, it's, yeah.
Well, the base charge gets you, see, you
Yeah.
don't use enough water to really bother with.
Right.
But it's the base charge that eats it up, and it's kind of the same on the sewer side.
well, except sewer rates typically 5 times-ish what water rate would be for the equivalent units, I think, right?
Not 5 times.
Or more than double, I think.
Well,
Pretty close to being the same.
yeah, it's close. It's
That's what we
probably
talked about.
120%.
I would say, I don't have a problem charging more, but I would wanna be able to justify it. If we're gonna pick 110%, I personally wouldn't feel right about that unless we could point to something that says this is why it's 110%. Not because we pulled a number out of a hat, but why wasn't 105 or 120? I'd say we stick with 100% unless we can justify a different number.
I think you could justify a lot of things by pointing to facts that are subjective. So you could find something and point to 120%, and I could find something to point to 105%. But
Sure, yeah.
maybe 100% is fine.
And if we came
I
to
just-
consensus on that, I'd be okay with that too, but right now, I don't have anything that says it shouldn't be 100%.
Is there a concern if you had it at 100% that you'd be
Well,
underpaying?
one of the things too is that you say 110%, okay, now they're gonna say, all right. In 10 years, it might be cheaper to install this separate meter. Than to pay the extra if we aren't using it.
Yeah,
And like, you get a year when there's plenty of rain. And you probably won't irrigate all summer. So. Those years you'd save money by having that special meter installed.
or a wet month or
Yeah.
some, maybe we got a water system issue and we say no irrigation. Just
Yeah,
say no irrigation in July.
if that happens, they're still gonna be. Paying that additional each month.
My only thought is I don't know, we seem to take more showers, we wash more clothes, we're more active in the summer than the winter, and we just probably use more water, but I don't know.
You wanna say the 5-month window, whatever the highest month is? If there's.
You could do that too.
Yeah,
I don't know,
'cause that pushes the average up,
does.
so maybe that's a solution, picked out of the 5.
5 or 6 month.
Yeah, whatever the winter
Yeah,
month window would be, whatever.
Cause then if you have if you go to Florida for December, that pulls down your average, right?
Mhm.
And so then you're benefiting
Right,
in the long run, but if you use the highest month in that 6-month span or 5,
Yeah.
that makes sense, cause you're probably not gone for all the 6 months.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but you could also, what if all your people come over for Thanksgiving in November? All your family comes, now you got,
Their own bad.
Happens at the 4th of July too,
yeah.
and so.
You can complicate this in any
could.
number of ways, like, you come up
That's
with
my
If-
concern
if you
too.
don't wanna
a
add
6-month average.
6-month average
You know what,
is
take the
is a
6-month
Reasonable
average.
person can.
The highest, okay, if you don't wanna use the average of November through May or April, whatever. Then take the average, the 6th highest month and say that's, what we're gonna go
Yeah,
by.
you could do that too, you could take the 3rd highest month, I don't care, you just need a
That
way.
way, cause like you say, a lot of people disappear for
Well,
month
so
or 2
so that
months or
that is an
whatever.
issue in Rochester. I know that has come up as an issue. And there is a minimum sewer charge. And it's like 6 units of water. And so if you go to Arizona for 2 months, well, you're still gonna, the average is still gonna include 6 units of water for those periods you're going. And so that you don't get free sewer in the summer.
Right. So even if the water meter doesn't move, they're still getting billed
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, the average, there's a minimum number plugged in there for snowbirds.
Like charge, I call it.
We do have a number of snowbirds in Orinoco.
And I hope to be one soon. So
So whatever we decide, we need to make sure it's simple, so our utility billing is not complicated. Yeah. That's my concern too. If we pick a 5 or 6 month average,
You can have a spreadsheet, do lots of things if you want, it's not that hard to do.
I could just say, okay, the highest month and say that's what. Pick the highest month out of the 6 month window. Highest month, that's what you're gonna be billed for in the. Figure that.
Well, it's the lesser of those two things, right? If they don't irrigate in July, then it's whatever their number is.
Yeah.
I did a lot of irrigating last summer because I had a couple of new trees.
Yeah.
If I wouldn't have watered them, they'd been dead. You know?
So
a lot of watering.
is it appropriate to make a motion to use a 6-month average from November to April?
I think that would be great. I just like, something to point to that. So staff has some guidance.
So I'll make a motion that summer, we're gonna say summer is May through October. Summer sewer billing is based off of the 6-month water usage average. Which is then what, November through April?
The higher of the 6 month.
I'm gonna go with a
Or the
6-month
lower, I
average.
mean.
My motion is for a 6-month average.
Okay.
Take those 6 months, add them together with a minimum of some number to be determined by Kane.
So I figured out what the averages were for the last, well. December 2022, January, February 23. I did that for all the accounts. And put that into a spreadsheet. I could extend that to cover more months, like you're saying.
I think we just wanna know when the snowbirds come back, how much water are they using? And that's how much their sewer bill should reflect. So if that's, and honestly, I don't even know what we bill it. Is it 100 cubic feet or
Per gallon.
per gallon? So whatever. Single family residential snowbird kind of usage is, that would be kind of our minimum for the average calculation. I don't know what that number is. But I'll leave it to the folks that have more experience to set that number.
so if I could ask, why don't we, if you don't mind withdrawing your motion and have Kane, because he started to work on a spreadsheet, have him expand that spreadsheet to include 6 months and come back in January and give us some information about how this would work out before we make a motion.
So a little clarification needed there. Do you want to average one resident over 6 months, right? Or do you want to then take those averages and average with all of the rest of the users? So you want everyone to have a different rate.
No, what I'm looking to say is just the bare minimum that we would feel comfortable billing somebody for sewer. So again, most snowbirds aren't a family of six, you know, living in it's a retired couple. And so how much is that average retired couple? How much water are they using in June, July and August?
So with the rate structure that we have, there's a base rate. They'll get charged the base rate whether they use a gallon of water or not.
So maybe that's our number.
Well, that is the number.
That's based
Well,
on,
on the sewer, maybe we take that water usage base rate and we plug it in for the sewer usage.
No,
base rate.
there's a sewer base rate too.
Oh. So even if you don't use anything, you pay your
Yeah.
meter charge or your service charge, account fee, whatever you want to
that's in
call
our
it,
utility code, right?
plus some usage charge, whether or not you used any.
Yeah, if you use zero, the usage charge is zero,
Like a
but there's
water
still the
bill.
base charge.
Oh, no, has to be a usage charge, because the base charge really just covers the infrastructure,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't actually cover the gallons of water that you pump to their home and that they then sent to the treatment plant for treatment.
So quick math, say $20 per ERU, right? Per
Okay.
connection, right? A household connection, and then so much per thousands of gallons after that, right? So. So based on the 400 connections we have, residential and non-residential, right? The average would be $35, roughly. Rough numbers here for those 3 months, December, January, February. That means everyone gets the same bill.
Irrespective of their use.
No,
That would be the average.
so what that means is if when the spreadsheet does the math. And the spreadsheet shows 0 for 3 months. We don't actually average, we don't use the 0 in the calculation, because we know. That they're not using 0 in the summer, because they're here, physically here. And so we use a different number. A non-zero number, and it is arbitrary and subjective. But it's not 0. And it's not perfect.
You just take that out of the calculation, I would think. I don't know. They don't have at least. They haven't used at least.
So I think where I was in Wisconsin previously, they did it on average your winter months for 6 months. But if you had months where you didn't have any usage, then you got average by 4 months. If there were 2 months you were gone, then they took your average of 4 months and there's your average. And then in the summer months, if your average was, I'm just making a number up for easy math, $100. Okay,
Well, summer months.
in the summer, your actual bill, whatever you actually, because now you're there, right? If it was more than that, you had to pay the minimum of $100, or if you used only $50 in summer because you didn't shower or whatever, then you only paid the $50. You actually paid your usage, but you had a way to account for those who did sprinkle and use the irrigation in the summer, and you also had a way to account for offset those who weren't there. That wasn't used in their average. But there's not many people who are gone 6 months. So that's why it was done over a longer period of time. And then again, you could tell by the numbers.
You throw out the zeros.
You throw out the months, you weren't here, there was no usage, 0, your meter didn't spin at all. Well, I'm not gonna use that in the average, and that's easy to do in an Excel sheet.
Yep.
You'd be like, yeah, that column ain't going into the average. That way you get an accurate value to know what to assess somebody in the summer.
The issue with that then is that because the spreadsheet that he uses just dollars was no flows, so there's always a base rate in that average number, so we really can't say how much they use because everybody's getting the base rate, and that's what we come up with the average. But if we took 6 months of November to April, average that, and then did a May to October, average that. And if we average that base for all 400, compare the summer rate average to the winter rate, we can come up with 110, 115, 120, maybe it's only 105%. But that would help us with the percentage for the summer months if we want to do that. At least we got some facts to work with rather than just grabbing numbers.
Kane, is it easy for you to get that data? Like, how hard was it? Because obviously you had to manually go and for all users, go and put that in there.
It's a little difficult, but you know, It can be done, yeah.
I guess to your point, and to your point, that would be the most objective way to do it, is you base it on real data. So it's not arbitrary numbers we're making up, 110. No, we actually calculated it for,
And I would pick. Sorry, Kane, I'd pick 2 years. If you wanna pick this year, which is really dry. Compared to last year, which was more wet,
he just made more work for you.
not just based out of my lawnmower. This year, I mowed 16 hours. Last year, I mowed 23 hours. Just because we had more rain last year than this year. This is kind of an odd year for summer usage because it's so dry. We do have high users of irrigation.
What are, you asked to calculate the average summer usage as well, right? Is that,
We could either do this, like you said, the individual average, or we can figure up all the averages, then average the average to come up with something that this whole group. So it turns out. there's really not-
Averaging the average, in my opinion, doesn't make sense, because if I have a family of 10 and you are living alone,
Right.
we shouldn't pay the same.
no, yeah, it should be on a per account,
Yeah,
per meter.
and
That's not-
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
wouldn't have to average the summer months because they're actual.
Yeah, right.
So we
The only
did that.
thing I'm trying to figure out is
Well,
the
except
usage.
it's the winter water usage average is what sets the summer sewer use,
Okay,
right? Because again, you're using outdoor water.
Yeah.
So that's, you don't calculate it over the summer months, but you use that number in the summer months.
So why don't we just start with, Kane already has 3 months done. Why don't you just add the other 3 months? So you had November to April, if I remember correctly, and just do November to April of your 400 users. Start there. Let's look at that average in January, or our next meeting, and see what that number is.
yeah,
Because I think you'll be able to actually make a rate from that number.
I
Keep it as simple.
I don't know what the point of that is, unless you're gonna really use an average for everybody. And based on the example I just provided, that makes.
You're not
no
using an
sense.
average for everybody. It would be by account. So in Wisconsin, it was by account.
Right.
To your point, but my average for those 6 months is $100. Your average is
So
$50.
you're gonna have 500 different averages that apply to each account. Why do we
Yeah.
wanna see that?
Well, I'm just saying, if you wanted to know what it would look like, you want actual data. But I mean, that's how I would base it.
What is the
So in
difference?
Kane's,
Yeah.
just to give you an example, on Kane's spreadsheet, and you can explain it. You know, we told up the individual ones is like 15,000 and
Yep.
change.
For the month, yep.
If you take the average. And accumulate and come up with an average that applies to everybody. You take that times the 400. It was within $100 of being the same. Hard to believe, because you have such big averages from 30, individual from 30 to 90 to 60 to 40. But if you come across but 38.5 and put that against the 400. You came within $100 of being the same.
I don't follow. What are we talking, 15, what's 15,000? What was that number?
So that's
30.
based on a $20 ERU.
So that's $15,000 or gallons?
Per month. Yeah.
Dollars. That's what the utility collects in revenue from the accounts.
Correct.
400 accounts. That's what the 400 is?
If we go with $5 per 1,000 gallons. Okay, so if you use. You use 500 gallons, right? So
Okay.
you take $5 times point. Point thousand gallons, right?
Yeah.
So 0.5 thousand gallons. And then you get $2.50 on top of your $20 ERU, your bill's $22.50, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's whose average was, say, 3,000, right? For those months, if you're 3 months out of the year, your average was 3,000 gallons, right?
Yeah.
You'd pay $5 per 1,000 gallons, there's 15,
Yeah.
plus your $20 ERU, right?
Yeah.
So you're at 35.
Correct, yeah.
First example, you were at $22.50. Right?
Yeah.
So say you got 2 people, you could add those both up, divide by 2, right? That's your average. You're giving,
And they're both gonna pay $30. Round numbers.
right?
No, I don't like that idea at all.
You wanna pay as you go.
That guy should pay $22.50, this guy should pay 37. Or gal.
Yep.
Or whatever.
Yep.
Because the average is an individual home's average,
So,
Not a citywide.
not a citywide average,
okay,
yes. I mean, we're all paying the same $5 per 1,000 gallons.
Yep.
But I'm not, I use more water. I like long showers. I got 2 kids,
sure.
right? Yeah. Yep. Right, yeah.
I think you gotta somehow keep it to, every house should be based on your 6 months average during the winter, not compared to their neighbor, but just on their usage. And then in the summer, bill them accordingly. Or what, I think you gotta keep that by household, because the guy that's got 6 kids, I don't wanna pay that half of his bill.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
It's just wife and I.
So there's gonna be, right now, we've got 400 water users, so there's gonna be 400 different rates.
No, 400 different usage numbers.
Usage.
Which
Different
they're
usage numbers.
already are,
Correct.
because we've got 400 different meters.
The rate structure is already there, right? The rate structure's there, it's just you're paying for your usage.
Yes.
And that's averaged on your individual home.
Yeah, and then that would give you more. Based on your own individual home, then if I water every day all next year and Larry doesn't. My bill will be reflected accordingly because Larry's won't be. But you can't average the whole city. I think we gotta figure out a way to do this per household. Per user. You come up with a good average. That's making your job worse, isn't it?
Well, I'm just thinking here is take it one step further. And you take your monthly water bill. And have a formula for sewer. Right? You use 1,000 gallons in water. Use 1,000 gallons in sewer, right?
In the winter, absolutely yes.
Okay,
Not in the summer.
Okay.
Because in the summer, I'm watering my grass.
and you're telling me.
And I use 5,000 gallons of water
the six-
and only 1,000 gallons of sewer.
So the 6 month window is November through April.
Yep.
That rate would apply year round.
I think I
So we're
don't,
not changing rates, we gotta add it.
I don't know in the
Percentage
winter.
for May, June and July.
Well.
Say that again?
That figure, not that rate, but that figure will tell us how much extra they use for irrigating. That's how much we don't charge them for sewer because of that irrigation water. Is that what we're trying to accomplish?
What was your question around that?
Complicated.
I will tell you, in the other states, it's only used in the summer. You
So
only
Ross
use
said
that
we-
number to estimate your usage in the summer, because your water usage in the summer is higher, but you're not using all the sewer. So that rate that you calculate in that November to April timeframe, you only use that as your sewer sort of maximum in the summer. It's not applied year round. Because in the winter months, you actually take the real numbers, because you're not watering in December. So you use real numbers those months. You're taking the real meter readings and you're calculating your water and sewer those months. But in the summer, you're gonna use your calculated winter months for your sewer usage and bill off of that.
Yeah,
That's how that works.
I think that's right.
That's how it's done. Everywhere else I've lived, that's how it's been done.
There's a hurt in my brain.
Well, I don't think, it's not all that complicated. I think we're doing this to ourselves.
I think so.
Circle back around for what we'd like to have. If we wanna have Kane do something for January meeting. You wanna look at a 6 month period? And do that at least that?
I don't know what I'll do with that information that Kane brings to the table.
Thank
So I mean, I don't wanna have you do a bunch of work and then,
you.
and not know what to do with the numbers you give us, so.
be able to calculate out what your summer bill would be. On an individual basis.
I've still got my water bills. I can do that on my
Water
own.
bill is gonna be your water bill. What we're trying to figure out is what the sewer bill is gonna be
In the
for the
summer,
winter time or
the summer.
summertime, because
because we have we have water that's not going down the sewer pipe,
right,
coming in.
okay. We aren't gonna worry about that this month or next month because that's not gonna be an issue. So let's move on and
So your motion,
Would it be helpful, well, I don't know. I don't have the language skills to probably write something that covers this, but in theory, I mean, let's just take it, like, who here supports that 6-month average per household for the summer month sewer usage? Okay. And the folks that don't, any different plan, a second meter, who would rather see 2 meters?
the 2 meters is accurate, period. It is. And if they opt not to do that, we have to have an alternative way of charging them.
No, you don't, you can just tell them. If you want to save money on your sewer bill, you're going to install a second meter.
Okay,
You don't need to give them an option.
yeah, that's one way of wording it, yeah. So that your sewer bill's gonna be based on your meter usage, period. If you don't like it, install the second meter. And disproving in that, yeah, okay, that might be a good way. You worded it differently.
Well, I still, I don't support that, because there's still a lot of other, you may have a hose bib on the front of your house. You don't have a permanent irrigation system, but you may use significant amount of water that doesn't get sewered.
Yeah, but that's called washing your car or
Right.
watering your lawn, or those are all under that summer usage.
Filling a pool.
Yeah,
Yeah, so and I don't think having a structure that requires a second meter covers those usages.
well, give them the option.
I think the problem though is it's $1,500 for another water meter.
But if you fill a pool. if
And you may
fill-
not be able to install one on a hose bib on the front of your house.
No, a hose bib doesn't use enough water to mount the diddly squat. Unless you're using that for filling a pool or irrigating all summer. That hose bib out there doesn't use that much water. Really,
irrigation uses a lot of water.
yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Filling a pool does.
Thousands.
Mhm.
Of course, that goes through the hose bib, but I mean, if I had a pool that I was filling every year, I'd think seriously about the separate meter. But then I had to replumb my house too. But because the way my hose bibs are, but if they're gonna run if they wanna do that to save money, give them the option. It's gonna cost them a little bit up front, but then they will save in the end. It may take 5 years or 10 years to recoup that, but they'll be there for the life of the house.
So we have the consensus about 6-month rate from November to April.
Yeah,
So if we look at the summer months. It looks like we're talking about an irrigation meter or. A percent, 110%. From May to October.
Well, I don't know, 110%,
Is that right?
I don't know.
no, 100%.
Yeah,
Or we're not talking about percent now.
I have not. I know it has been discussed, but that's,
Rather than say 100%,
yeah.
Well, if we did if you did a 6-month spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Compare that for the same time
I'll do
period.
that.
The winter months were the same both years, so let's do that. And back in January, and we know it's about 38.5. No. Forget that. We're not doing that. So we have individual averages.
Correct. Yep.
And do a comparison between a 3 and a 6 month on each line item. And,
Are you talking about only residential meters or all meters?
right now, all meters,
It'd be all
Okay,
non-residential and
all
residential.
individual meters.
all meters, period.
Yep,
Okay.
So let's do that and come back in January and we'll be giving it more thoughts about this. If we can do anything different than a 6-month average per home for the water rate or for the sewer rate for the whole year. And, because we're adding 3 additional months, November, December, and April. So that may, and if there's a way we could look at those numbers and based on the sewer rate that we have in the ordinance, if we could put that into our cash flow analysis. Could we, is that a line item in our Bonnie's cash flow analysis to see how well that would impact our operating expenses or income? I really think so.
Not to that detail, no.
Not that detail, okay.
I don't think so.
Let's do that. Let's do that. Let's do at least that. Let's circle back around again in January and finalize what we want to do. It's a good discussion, a lot of good ideas, but I think we just need to get some basis numbers first in front of us. Or as soon as you get that done, send it to me and I'll blank
Yeah.
copy to the committee.
I'll see if I can't find a copy of an ordinance that has that built into it. Maybe that'll help to be able to read through it, maybe not. But
The bottom line is we want to make sure we've got a good plan that helps support the operation maintenance of the sewer plant. We don't want to cut ourselves short. And, because that's just going to result in higher sewer rates to make up the difference. So we might as well give it our best shot to start out of the gate and go from there. And the challenge we have is that, what happens in April and May, it's gonna be the rest of the year that we're trying to cover our expenses, and that's why we have the CIP to back us up to a certain extent. Next item was, the same item. That's preparation for sewer use billing beginning in April. Kenny and I had a discussion just about this rate recently, so we need to be looking at and working with Renee on our something that we set up a couple years ago with our sewer utility line items and budgets to make sure we're covered with that, so. We're trying to incorporate, the one thing we've gone to Renee and ask her is how we can, if the program, the software that we have for water can add all these additional numbers for the sewer rates, so it all comes out in one utility bill. We don't want sewer bills and water bills, we need a utility bill. So we don't know for sure if there's some limitations to that billing process or we can expand it, so that's. We'll work there, but ideally it'd be nice to have everything on one bill.
I think way back when this was approved, the rate structure that we council wanted to go with was essentially the same rate structure as Rochester was using. And so when we were talking about this was back in, I think, 2022 or so those rates, they're documented, but we don't have any inflation factor on those rates, so they should go up at least 3%. Or you might just mimic whatever Rochester is doing, because that's what we did back then. So they, I'm guessing their rates probably went up probably more than 3%.
Yeah, it's like, I want to say it's like closer to 6%.
I mean, there is an annual increase, so it'd be compounded.
Right.
Which should be that, but I think any single year is pretty close to the 2 or 3%. But I honestly, I don't track those closely, so.
Rochester passes a resolution for 6 years in a row, I think.
Yeah, it's a pretty good.
5 or 6,
time period.
everybody knows exactly what that rate is.
Yeah.
And you can plan for it. I think it's something for us to consider too.
Anyway, all I'm saying is you gotta adjust that rate upward to match where we are.
Cause all those calculations were present value cash flows anyway, right?
And we were assuming, you know, an inflation factor on all.
Okay. Um. Any more discussion about the next item, the cross-section control? Backflow prevention? Minutes,
Yeah, I think it's a necessary component of the program. And it's better to get out in front of it. Rather than wait 15 years and then have to. Go back,
I'm sorry, go back to the,
well, go back and try to tell people that don't have backflow preventers that they need to install them after the fact. I think it's probably better to implement that program. Earlier, rather than later.
Do you not have anything
Write that
in
in
place
there.
now for commercial buildings? There's no code or nothing?
Not probably for a backflow, there's state plumbing code,
Yeah.
but,
Like, cause I mean, obviously we have commercial buildings going in right now,
right,
so there's nothing that they have to install to prevent that?
Well, but like the commercial buildings going in now don't have irrigation systems, but. Or like they don't
everything.
have irrigation systems, but
whatever we decide to do, it should be write that into our utility code too, so. It's documented. We know Pine Island has anything? Looked at their backflow cross section.
Yep, they do. Pine Island, Plainview,
It seems like a pretty basic language.
Can we copy?
it is, and you know
Plagiarized?
that, like I brought last meeting, I brought Owatonna and Rochester's, and a lot of places have adopted those. Crossed out RPU, crossed out Owatonna. Put in Orinoco. I think a lot of people have been doing that. I know Minnesota Rural Water, they offer a template as well.
That's a good starting point.
The key here is the public water supplier, the city, needs to protect the water, the quality of water. And so if somebody has a paint shop, whatever, they're mixing chemicals and that gets back into the system, now everyone's affected. So it's safe. Safe water for all. And then plus having a one-stop shop for it. Don't mention it in any other ordinances or codes. Let's just have this one document that covers all cross control and backflow prevention. So it's clear.
But we need to get into our codes too, right?
Correct, we need to, how do I say it? Cause there is some language and it's poor language, I think. We need to get rid of that, you know, so approve to change that and then approve a new ordinance or a new utility code. Like I say, a one-stop shop.
Okay, I guess I'm not sure exactly what's the bad language is. We can talk about that outside the meeting here, but
So something that city council would have to do, hold a public hearing. And then approve.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it
Well, let's
makes
get that
sense, everybody
template.
else is having it in there.
we'll get the template and compare the template to local cities and no sense of reinventing the wheel, but if we can use something already in place, we can do that. And then we can decide how we want to disseminate it. Okay. All right, anything else to touch base on? Seeing none, I make a motion, the meeting adjourned.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Hey.
Thank you very much.
Planning and zoning. No, it's- Do you know what the new one that's outside?
I saw that in the thing, yeah.
Maybe it's next to Elwood.
Uh,
That'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, my brother